Hey y'all, welcome back to Healthy Design. I thought today maybe we talk a little bit more about the diet and gut health side of things. I think it's important to know that diet people get really, really defensive over their choice in diet. I don't think we need to be. There's a lot of diets out there. I think what we need to do is look at kind of more of what the diets have in common rather than the differences they have. And that's where we'll see a lot of times where the health benefit comes from. A lot of people, if they're eating the standard American diet and they switch to a vegetarian or vegan diet, they get health improvements. They feel better, their lab values improve, different things along those lines. We also see on the other side of the coin, a lot of times when people go from that standard American diet and eat a carnivore diet. So two opposite ends of the spectrum, but yet their health markers improve for both. So what we can look at there is, okay, it's not about vegetables and it's not about meat because one group has one group doesn't, and vice versa. What it comes down to is that there's differences that they're having from that standard American diet. And those differences, not eating those foods anymore, maybe getting rid of some of the processed sugars and flours, different things like that, just things that are hyperpalatable and forcing them, well, that kind of create it, make it easy for us to eat too much of. Getting rid of some of those things might be what's causing a lot of those health improvements. So I think when you are looking at different things, try to see what commonalities they have and then look at the differences. But if you can find out what they have in common, that's probably a pretty good sign that those things are kind of what we need in general to be healthy. And then you can kind of add some other things on to add that context, nuance, and everything again. So with the diet part, especially, and other things too, we've got to talk about bias. We all have a bias. And that's why you need to listen to different sources of information so you get both sides of things or even multiple sides. You need more than just two sides. So what happens is with diet is people will say they're eating that standard American diet and then they switch. We'll just say vegan in this case, and then they improve. So they're like, well, this is the best diet. This is what humans were meant to eat. Everyone needs to eat this way. But that's not the case. It worked for them. And that's great that it worked for them. But then they tell their friend does the same thing, but they don't get the same results. So then does that mean that vegan's just absolutely horrendous? No one should do it? I don't think that's the case either. I'm not a big vegan or a vegetarian fan. I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, so it's what it boils down to. You got different health issues, and there's whatever root cause it's creating that issue for you. Someone else could have the exact same symptoms but have a different root cause. So when you change to this diet, if it addresses that root cause, you're going to get amazing benefits. Or if you use a supplement that addresses that, just whatever that addresses that root cause, it's going to give you some spectacular benefits. And you're going to think that's what everybody needs. But then that other person who has the same symptoms but different root cause, they try it, they don't get the same benefits. They either get no benefits or they might even get worse. And so does that now mean that that diet or that supplement is bad? No, it just means it's not what's best for them. It's not the right thing for them. So I mentioned I'm not a big vegetarian or vegan fan. That's me personally. Part of my reason for that is you can't make the argument that vegetarian and vegan is the healthiest diet for us to eat and it's the way all humans are to eat when we know it's going to lead to certain nutrient deficiencies. Iron and B12 are two common nutrient deficiencies we see in vegetarians and vegans. Now, that does not mean there's no way that you can get over that hurdle of those nutrient deficiencies. Obviously, you can take a supplement, you can take iron as a supplement, you can take B12 as a supplement, and then you got those needs met. There are other issues that could be there too, but there are ways around it. So I'm not saying no one should eat vegetarian or vegan, but I don't think we can say it's the healthiest diet and it's the way all humans were meant to eat. Um, we also don't see many civilizations in the past or currently that only eat meat or only eat vegetarian. There are a few, but they also have to make sure they're getting those whole protein sources. So that's why I don't think there's been a civilization that just ate beans or just ate rice. That's why you kind of combine rice and beans so you get that full and complete protein picture. So again, there's ways around things if you are going to be vegetarian and vegan, and there's ways around things if you're going to be carnivore too. That could lead to certain nutrient deficiencies too, unless you're eating like all the organ meats as well. I would say on the carnivore side, if you are eating the organ meats, then you're going to have most of the micronutrients taken care of and macronutrients as well. Obviously, carbs may not be there. You can make the argument that carbs are the only non essential macronutrient. And I mean, that's true because our body does have a way to make carbohydrates in the absence of carbohydrates in our diet. You can't say that for all amino acids or protein, and you can't say that for all fats either. There are essential fatty acids and essential amino acids. That just means there's ones that we have to get from our diet because our body cannot produce them on our own. So now, having said there are no essential carbohydrates that our body can produce it on its own, that does not mean that that's going to be the most efficient way to do things or the best way to go about doing things. So I'm not trying to say just never eat carbs, you'll be just fine, or eat all the carbs you want. Again, there's nuance. We got to get the context and what might be best for you. So let's see. I guess probably next, the best thing to do is kind of give you what my bias is and kind of how I see things, and some information to help back that up, so I'm not just making up things. I do probably tend to lean a little bit more towards the low carb side of things, but I don't think we have to always be low carb by any means. Um, for me, I guess one of the ideas behind health for me is that I think there are times where we need to kind of feast and times where we need to have famine, starve. I think that's what our body was made for. I think a lot of the health issues that we have come down to mitochondrial issues, and the mitochondria are great at doing different things for us. But if we have too much energy coming in, that could be too much fat, and especially we have high fat and high carb, it's going to be way too much energy coming in, and that's going to end up leading to damage for the mitochondria in our cells, and then that's going to eventually affect function. So does that mean never have a high fat, high carb meal? No, I'm not saying that, but we don't want to make that the staple in what we do all the time. So for me, one of the ways that I'll kind of do the feast and famine is that I have times in the year where I try to focus on building muscle and have that anabolism. And then there's times where I focus on fat loss and have catabolism. And so that's what our body's made to do. It's made to have these times where we're building up and then times where we're kind of breaking down things and getting rid of them. So that's a healthy thing for us to do, and that's what we want. That's just one way I do it. The other way too is, when I'm hungry, I'll eat. Let's say I have something going on and it's a little busy and I don't have time to eat, then I will skip that meal and I'm not going to worry about it. Again, if I'm trying to maximize my muscle growth, that's not going to be the best thing. I'm not necessarily trying to get optimal or maximal all the time. I'm mid 40s, so I'm not trying to just build and get to be some 300-pound behemoth. I'm a little bit over 200 pounds right now. I'd like to gain a few more pounds of muscle and then start leaning out before summertime gets here. So if I miss one meal, it's not going to be that bad. I might even eat a little bit more at that next meal to kind of help make up for things, but I just won't stress out about anything. And let's say it's during a fat loss phase and, craving hit or just out with friends, out with family. So I ate more than what I normally would have eaten on that day during the fat loss phase. I'm not going to freak out about that either. Be like, okay, I just ate a little bit more. I can either cut down a little bit on the next meal or just get back to my normal on that next meal. That one meal is not going to make this huge difference. What makes a big difference is when that one meal then becomes 2 meals and 3 meals and 4 meals and all meals. Then we have an issue. But just one doesn't really do a whole lot. I think I've got it on Instagram, but you can see just basically one night or one day of eating, I gained 8 pounds the next morning on the scale. Now, obviously, I didn't gain that much muscle. That'd be great if you could gain 8 pounds in one day. That'd be sweet. Not going to happen though. It also wasn't that much fat because you can't gain that much fat. So what it was is just extra food coming in from eating more, and then a whole bunch of fluid because a lot of that food was carbohydrates. And so within a couple days, all that weight was gone, right back to that same weight I was a few days before. But that just lets you know kind of how food can adjust things and change things. And that's why, the scale can be good, but it's not the end all be all, because you can, depending on what you do, you can really fudge those numbers and make them look different ways. So like I said, that one day of eating and 8 pounds, that's quite a lot. It was a fun day of eating though. So again, I tend to lean more towards that low carbohydrate side, especially during the fat loss phases. I tend to kind of depends. I mean, you have to see how your body responds, but a lot of times with that, especially early on, I might only have one day or 2 days where I eat high carb. Um, Kind of this last cycle last year, it did seem to be more like where I'd have 4, maybe 5 days that were low carb, and then like the weekend have 2 days, maybe even 3 days where I ate a little bit more food, and so more carbohydrate on those days, and that seemed to keep fat loss going at a pretty steady rate. So, and it wasn't quite as hard to do as other times. Later this year, or I guess early next year, when I do start that fat loss phase, I'll document things on here, and you guys can follow along, kind of see, because there's different things I've learned over time with that works for me. Maybe they'll be helpful for you, but at least gives you some ideas. Um, and so then during like a muscle gain phase, or when I'm trying to build up, I will have more carbohydrates and more days where I have carbohydrates. So a lot of times the way I'll do it is more like a carb night or carb backloading. That tends to work well for me. I tend to have more even energy if I save the carbs for later in the day rather than early on. If I do have like a very heavy carbohydrate meal and don't have a whole lot of protein in it, then I will notice like I'll be a little bit more sluggish after that if I had that early in the day. If I have more carbohydrates, but I also have a good amount of protein, then I don't notice those same effects. So that just seems to be the way my body responds. Everybody's different. So some people may be able to have a lot of carbohydrates, little protein, and not notice anything. Who knows? So, just kind of see what works for you on that. Another, I guess, bias of mine is I see people that have different health issues, and a lot of times there's inflammation that goes along with those health issues. And I think that's why they do tend to respond better on that lower carbohydrate side rather than a higher carbohydrate diet. Because we do know that carbohydrates are pro-inflammatory, more so than protein and more so than fat. And so maybe by decreasing that, that helps to take a little bit of load off and a little bit of inflammation out of the system so that their body can then respond to things and do what it needs to do. So again, that's kind of my bias. That's why I lean a little bit more towards that. But I don't think we need to go no carbohydrate at all times for any reason whatsoever. But I also don't think we need to be, we're going to have carbohydrates all the time for every reason and no reason whatsoever. We need to balance things out. What we know with most cultures is that they ate some type of mix between meat and vegetables. So I do think we need to have a balance there, unless there's a specific issue for reason or a reason why you can't do that. There are plenty of people who swear by the carnivore diet and that it helped them out with a whole bunch of health issues. Jordan Peterson and his daughter are two prime examples of this, where it made a huge difference in their life. By all means, keep doing it. It's working for them, so there's no need to change everything. But just also keep in mind, if you've got health issues too, maybe it is something you want to try, but just keep in mind, you may not get the same results they did. Again, it's worth trying, but don't be upset if it doesn't work out quite the same way. What I've seen a lot of times with people is that they might have to maybe get rid of some foods to start with for a little bit of time, not a very extreme elimination diet, but maybe they just need to cut down on things some, and then they can add those things back. Again, I mentioned before, what I see a lot of times, I think, is that the gut's just inflamed, and that's leading to some of the sensitivities people have with food. And so what I've noticed is by kind of cutting back on things a little bit, that allows people to eat stuff they didn't think they could eat. They just can't eat large quantities. One example is like with my wife. She seems to be sensitive to nightshades, and so she can eat them. She can eat tomatoes. She can eat, Brussels sprouts. She can eat different things like that. But, getting like mushrooms and Brussels sprouts and, all these nightshades all together in one meal, that's not going to go so well. That tends to just be too much for the system, but having a small amount of one, she can do that and eat things. So, that's some of the things you can tease out with things too. So it doesn't seem to necessarily be all the time that people have to eliminate a food just entirely. It's that they have to maybe decrease the quantities, maybe take a little break from it, but then start eating it again, but at a low amount and not combined with other similar types of foods. Obviously, there's exceptions to this. If someone has Crohn's, they do not need to eat gluten. That's not a sensitivity or an allergy. That's an autoimmune condition. That's a whole nother level. We don't want to play around with that. Um, and then some of the things we know too, like from Weston Price's work, where he went around, looked at all the different civilizations, or many different ones, and he noticed that they were eating plants, they were eating meat and different things, and that they actually had healthier jaw structures, teeth, and things than people that were eating more Western diets. So those are good things that we see. And then also with a lot of the nutrient density information, and there's been research on this, most people tend to think that all vegetables are more nutrient dense than meat sources, but that's not often the case. Organ meats tend to be some of the most nutrient dense foods, and then a lot of meats come after that with a vegetable thrown in here and there. I don't have the list in front of me, but they're easy to find and you can see. So again, this isn't to say, okay, just eat meat, don't eat vegetables. It's to say we need a balance. We need all the things in there. So my goal with people is not to get them eating the least amount of foods that we possibly can. Is to give them the ability to eat the most amount of foods, and so they can have all kinds of different combinations and enjoy things and not be afraid of a certain food or afraid of anything, basically. I want them to kind of know how to be in tune with their body and know what's good for them and know how things affect them so they can adjust and move and enjoy life. And what I want for my life is I want to have the best quality of life that I can for as long as I can. I don't have control over what that time frame is, so I'm just going to do the things I can to try to stack the deck in my favor as best I can, and then I'm going to let things play out how they play out. So I think that's most of the things with diet, at least from a very kind of 30,000 foot view. If you got specific questions on things, then reach out, let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, share it with people, and I will see you next time.